Hi guys, welcome to our season 2 Back to Basics ITC and CTA podcast. I'm your host Nyadzani and I'm sitting with our lovely panelists today with firstly Dikaledi, Aaron and Khopalang. If you don't know our panelists by now, then you need to go back and watch from episode 1, guys. You can't just jump in and start watching from episode 3. Please go back and watch from episode 1. There are very important and valuable tips that you can get from each and every episode. So guys, we're on episode 3. The end is near. Oh my word. A lot of anxiety, but how are you guys feeling today?
Awesome.
Less nervous.
Yeah.
There's no
Same.
nerves now, I think.
You're used to it by now, hey? It's just easy days. Anyways, as you all know, we always start with a nice icebreaker game, and the panelists were like, Nads, please don't ask me hard questions today. But yeah, today I'm a bit nostalgic. Like, I'm gonna ask you a very chilled question. It should be easier, I'm hoping. And my question to you today is, would you rather be able to go back in time, or would you rather want to know the future, and why?
Can I start?
Yes, yes, of course.
I'd like to know the future. Very simple. Saw this in a movie back in the day called Back to the Future. So knowing the future, I would place all the Betway bets. Every single thing. Knowing who's going to win these games, the Olympics, whatever. You know, all those random odds where it's 5,000 to 1. I'd place all those little bets. I'll be a gajillionaire.
Wow, Dikaledi?
Yeah, cool. So I think, definitely the future. If you think about the world we live in now, we want to know the future of work. Companies want to know trends of what's going to happen, what digital technologies are going to come. So I think if I would be that person that actually knows, I would have so much consulting work. So
True.
You wanna
Talking
work?
about the mullah, hey? Khopalang?
Definitely the future, so that I can see what I'll become and what I'll be relevant in, So I think, because just being a CA is, you need more to stay more relevant. So, yeah.
Definitely. Okay, this was an easy one. Like everyone
It was a
answered
nice
this
one.
under 5 minutes. So wow. Okay. All right, guys. It brings us to our topic for today, which is bridging the knowledge gap. I think that is very, very key and very, very important. I remember back in the day when I was in CTA, I used to always freak out when a management costing question came up and I was like, oh my God, now what, But anyways, I'm sure many of you also have those moments, and today we're going to be diving deeper and giving you tips and tricks on how to overcome this. Aaron, what do we mean by bridging the knowledge gap, and where is the most common occurrence of this?
So when we speak about bridging the knowledge gap, this is again, it applies differently to everyone. So it's not, a blanket approach. We all struggle with different things. You mentioned costing, for example, was something that you struggled with. For me, that was one of my favorite topics. But what I did struggle with was discussions, especially accounting and tax. I would pick up the issue, but I'd jump to the answer, right? So I'm not building up my case. I wasn't building up my case to get more marks, because you can only get 1 mark for a conclusion, regardless of whether it's right or wrong. So what we mean by bridging that gap is, and we've touched on this before, is being honest with yourself. Like, what am I struggling with? What am I good at? That's also another part. What am I good at and what am I struggling with? How do I then approach this thing that I'm struggling with? For me, a lot of people think, I need to do these big tests, these big questions, past papers. More often than not, the way you can bridge that gap and understand is, pun intended, go back to basics. Right? Go to the tutorial that your lecturer did when they brought in that topic. go to that little 2, 5 mark, whatever question. You don't always have to do the hard things and the big questions to build your knowledge. A lot of times, it's those little tuts where they teach you a small principle that then fits into the broader principle. So for me, how you bridge that knowledge gap is, number one, being honest with yourself, and 2, try maybe doing some bite-sized questions, because practice makes perfect. Or as my grade 1 teacher said, the 5 P's, right? Proper preparation prevents poor performance, right? So, just prepare, practice, and these things will eventually come with that.
Awesome. So, Kgopolang, have you obviously experienced issues across the 4 disciplines? For example, knowledge gaps between the 4 disciplines: accounting, tax, finance, audit, right? What were your different approaches to dealing with those knowledge gaps in those different 4 principles or modules?
So I'll just start with the first one, financial management. So I used to Google a lot of those things. Like, there was a point where I didn't even know what a money market was. So I had to Google.
They'll see it,
right?
You don't know.
I would Google, and across all the 4 disciplines, I would make sure that I consult. So I'm sure my lecturers were tired of me by the end of the year, because I was that student. I would consult. I would go, if I feel like, okay, I studied section 31, transfer pricing, and I don't think I get it. Let me go to my lecturer and try and explain, this is what I get, but I don't get this part. So please explain to me in the act, what does this mean? And that's what got me through, because most of them I would consult. I would make sure that before a test, I go to a lecturer and I say, okay, what do you think should be the approach now? Not a scope, but approach, just to know what is it that I need to focus on, and what is it that I need to look at, right? So it really helped me a lot. Consulting, I always tell people, consulting helped me. I mean, if I was able to speak and say it as is, then I can definitely write it down. So, yeah.
Okay, just on that point, I have a follow-up question to you, Dikeledi. There are a lot of students that are also doing long-distance learning, either through UNISA, or some are doing their articles and studying for the ITC. And, they're like, I don't have time to do that. Or maybe UNISA doesn't offer, the best services for like consulting all the time with your lecturer. Like, what advice would you tell that candidate or that person who is repeating or working at the same time, or studying through UNISA, where those facilities and platforms aren't as easily available?
Yeah. I want to start with a little story first. When I was doing grade 11, I was failing accounting because I had skipped grade 10. I'd spent grade 10 overseas. So when I came back, I was doing accounting sort of for the first time. And I remember I couldn't get more than 40%. And I didn't understand, and I was very competitive. And there was a girl that was getting like A's. And I was like, there's something wrong. So anyway, I went back to basics. I remember reading the introduction of the accounting textbook. And the sentence that changed my life was, accounting is a man-made system, basically developed. So I was trying to make logic, like in math, trying to find logic in accounting, and that sentence helped me bridge my knowledge gap. And I was the only student in my high school that got a distinction in accounting. Went from couldn't get more than 40%, changed to standard grade, to getting a distinction, right?
Well done.
And I think the point made earlier around understanding the weaknesses and bridging them. Yeah, that muscle again. Yeah, so as someone that studied through UNISA, I did my CTA through UNISA, and then later on I did like an MBA, also long distance, and then I did another master's, also long distance. I think knowing that courses that are designed for long distance, there are resources provided for that. So UNISA does have resources, it does have tutors available, and I know that most times people do not make use of that. Then study groups, we spoke about study groups in the other episode. So do not isolate yourself. So there's a tendency, obviously, because you're studying with UNISA, you're just doing this by yourself at night. Try and have people that you're walking this journey with, even if you're still like not together, but like say we're gonna study from 6 to 8 together wherever you're sitting, and we're gonna be available to ask each other questions, and we have these resources to have like virtual meetings and discussions and all of that. Yes. So I think, and I mean, the reality is that most people might have to study long distance, even if they don't want to. I had to go because my bursary was like, we're not paying for you one more year to study full time. So you have to go start your articles, and then, we'll figure out how we'll sort that out. So, I'm just making sure that you make use of the tools that are there. Most times we don't. Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting, guys, and what a story, by the way, as well. Which directs me to my next question, Aaron, which is around insufficient preparation, because bridging the knowledge gap, goes hand in hand with insufficient preparation. As an experienced marker and psycher, how obvious is it to tell that someone has not prepared sufficiently?
Way more obvious than they think.
Yeah.
Like you can tell whether, and again, we don't mark the whole, you mark like a question, right? So more often than not, I would be marking math or strategy, risk management. I can tell you're not going to pass accounting or tax or auditing with how you answer your questions. You can see it in how you write. For example, people who don't prepare enough, in those big questions, they never write enough. That is one of the biggest tellers. More often than not, you're going to have a 30-mark question, 24 plus marks question out of that 50. And if you're not writing enough on that tells me you're not prepared. You can add up all the little things, but if you can't get a 50% on a 24-mark or 30-mark question, you're not prepared. So it's very telling in your scripts. It's with the way that you write. You can see it, that people sometimes rush through their work. Like their handwriting is neat and then suddenly they go to cursive. I curse you cursive people. Right, and it's also in the layout. Like we were talking about, laying out your answers, preparing while you're reading, you're thinking about this. I am a massive fan of workings. I believe if you look at any script where there's numbers, more marks are in your workings. But if you're not prepared, you are, and you see like 3 marks, you're like, oh my gosh, where do I get 30 marks from? Because you only know a few things, because you just studied, you didn't study enough. And because of that, you didn't study enough, you then overcomplicate things. So you're going in there, I'm not confident, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. So, because I didn't prepare enough, and therefore you're going to just write whatever, more often than not generic answers. You're just going to say, check the document at the security gate, whatever. But you're not going to say, check XYZ document that they mention in the thing at gate X. It's simple things like that shows me you're not prepared.
Sheesh. And then, Hopelang, walk me through your study day or your preparation period a week before the exams.
Okay. So before I study for any exam, I would go through all the topics. Right. So I would just list them all out and say, these are the ones I'm good at, these are the ones I'm not good at. Obviously focusing on the ones I'm not good at, right? So I would just wake up in the morning. I'm a morning person, so 4 a.m. I'm up.
Damn.
Yeah, I'm up.
Even in winter.
Yes. We still need to pass in winter.
Exactly.
I always failed in winter.
So I would wake up and grab a cup of coffee, then start, right? So I would just look at that topic that makes you anxious. that makes you want to quit.
First nine.
Yes, I start with that. So I go through one question, I do it, time myself, I do it, then I go through the solution, right? If there's anything I don't understand, I go to my lecturers, say, hi, I did this question. This is not what I'm understanding. Why is it like this? And suggest a solution. Then they can explain better. Now I know better and I feel better. You know, when you've done a question and now you know, and you know that that topic wasn't that good, like you don't like it, but because you get it, then it gives you more confidence to move on and do the topics that you feel less anxious about. So that was how I did it. But the last 2 days, please don't burn yourself out. Please just relax. Rest is important. Get 8 hours of sleep. That's very key. Get 8 hours of sleep. Make sure you rest, you eat well, and you keep up the good energy and positivity. Just be positive.
I like what you said about the last 2 days.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that whether it's ITC, APC, those
Yeah.
last 2 days, you shouldn't be putting anything new in your brain.
Yes.
If anything, if you're going to practice, you'll practice the things that you are good at.
Yes.
You know, to give yourself a little bit more confidence. And the day before, you shouldn't touch a book. Watch your favorite series, eat your favorite food, get a good night's rest.
Yes.
I'm all for that.
Yeah. And guys, please stay away from, people that give you so much anxiety and they say, I did this question, and you start doubting yourself. Just block them out. I know I put my phone on do not disturb the last 2 days. I don't want to be disturbed. I don't want to hear it. I'm good.
That's very true. Sure. Dika Lady, now that I know that you've done long distance learning through UNISA, how did you balance your time or plan your time between articles and, doing CTA again? Like, what advice would you give someone who's in that position, and how did you plan your time? Because, Flip, articles is tough, especially when, a deadline's looming, and the last thing you want to be doing is sitting there opening an accounting standard and, having to study for a CTA exam in the next week.
Yeah. I think, one, I want to acknowledge that I think the advantage that I think I had was, having done my CTA at UFS the first time, it's very intensive. So I felt like I had that knowledge. There was, a bit of, I'm coming from a very intensive environment, and UNISA was a bit less. So even the test structures were, UFS were writing like 6 hours, like one paper. And then UNISA were writing the 6 hours, but 4 papers together. So there, the testing is it's not easier, because this is not easy, but it's manageable. So I think, first of all, that's a perspective that you can have if you're doing through UNISA or any other provider, that it can be better. It was a better way of doing it in that sense. So it's not tougher in terms of content or the way they're testing. So we must get rid of that belief, because I believe that what you believe about what you're doing, it shapes how you approach it. So if you believe I'm doomed already because I'm at UNISA, that shouldn't be the case. It's not true. And then the other thing, little things like, I told myself that even though I'm working, I'm still a student. So while my friends were out buying couches for their places, and I didn't do any of that. I literally, my firm paid my fees, and then every month I had to pay like in installments over 10 months. So that means my salary wasn't even enough to enjoy the working life. So I think, telling yourself that I'm a student, I'm still a student, and my priority is still my studies. I remember my coach, the coach that you get at work, my coach was like to me, I don't care what ratings you get, you need to pass. She's like, you see that person, they've gotten the best ratings like for the past 6 years, but they're still not a CA. That means they don't have a future in this firm, because in the firm they want CAs, right? Yeah, so you need to keep the main thing. If it means getting a 4 rating, I don't know if that's still the lowest rating. If it means, getting a bit of grief, that's what you need to prioritize. I would get up respectfully at 5 and say, I need to go study, especially when there's an exam coming up. But it also means you need to be putting in the work where other people are playing and enjoying themselves. So balancing the fact that because I didn't work as much as I needed to in this exam period, I now need to catch up because I also can't be seen to be slacking, at work. People need to know that when it's exam time, I prioritize exam time. But when it's not exam time, I'm at least showing up at work. So I think that prioritization that has been a theme, and being in the game. You are here to pass. You need to pass, and there's a timeline to do it, and that is your number one priority. What you spoke about closing people off. If it means sacrificing a relationship, like breaking up with a girlfriend or a boyfriend, it's worth it, right? You need to decide what's more important. So really those things about life and how we go about life, I think that's what determines the success more than the studies. Yes. Thanks.
Thank you. Sheesh, what a loaded answer, hey? Which brings me back to my next question. Aaron, what services do Back to Basics offer in terms of bridging the knowledge gap? Because I would assume a student would come in and say, I don't understand tags, and they expect you to teach them everything. Like, how do you deal with that? Or let me ask, what services do you provide in this instance from a Back to Basics perspective?
So first of all, we're not going to teach you everything. We've only got a few months with you, whereas your lecturers have a year. So for us, when we onboard you, we've got like a survey document, and you, again, need to be honest with yourself. Because if you tell me you're not struggling with something, but you are, how am I going to know, and how am I going to assist you? So we've got that, survey that kind of outlines. The person we assign you gets that, so they know what you're dealing with. And we also try to pair you with someone whose strength is where your weaknesses is, right? So, for example, if you're struggling with, let's say, math, you would come to myself or Tasha. If you're struggling with accounting or tax, you may go to Ian. So it depends on what you're struggling with. We then obviously tailor that. So we'd do a lot more questions on those type of sections on our one-on-one type of things. That's probably where we'd cover. And then on a group basis, because we've got that info of our cohort, we can then tailor our technical lectures to cover those topics. So that's really how we do it. More often than not, people struggle with the same thing. A lot of students think, I'm alone in this, but you're not. I'm always going to have someone who struggles with reading time, who's going to struggle with comprehension, who's going to have some sort of knowledge gap, which is why I'll always have a job.
Wow. Wow, that was actually excuse me guys, that killed me. That was hilarious. We are actually reaching the end of our segment, but I'm gonna ask all three of you what approach you used for a specific topic or subject, whether it's accounting, tax, audit, right? So, and then Aaron, you'll get 2 basically, because they're 4. So basically, Khupalang, for accounting, what is the best planning, what advice or what is the best planning approach for preparing sufficiently for an accounting question on the day?
So,
by the way, the best, not the worst advice.
The best advice.
okay, so do integrated questions. And what my lecturers used to say is, do it to a point where you know all the steps, right? So that you never get it wrong. Because it'll probably be integrated. It won't be just impairment of assets. It will be integrated with IAS 16, So make sure you do integrated questions and ask as many questions as possible. Just make sure you understand. I would do 1 question a day, and it would take me so long because I would get that step wrong, and I'm just like, let me just do it again to make sure that I internalize it and I make sure I'm comfortable with it. So yeah.
Aaron, of course, the Manak guru and finance guru, what is the best advice you would give for preparing for a finance question or a MANAC question?
I would say number one, read, because those two topics have a lot. Where psych is also moving, is qualitative factors. It's a lot about. It's not less number crunching now than it is about should they consider, what are the risks, those types of things. So reading and getting exposed to different industries, etc., helps you come up with these qualitative factors. Something that resonates with me to this day was, I think it was DP1 or something in CTA. I got 80% for this question, so I did well, but there was a mark I missed, and it was a blueberry farm, sell, lease, whatever, that type of thing. And one of the marks was keep the blueberry farm, because blueberries are a superfood going forward. And my mind was blown, because I was like, yeah, I've been seeing a lot about blueberries. This was 2015-14, guys. The blueberries weren't as cool as they are now. But, that little thing opened my mind to, I need to know what's happening in the world so I can bring those into my qualitative factors. With the number stuff, it's practice. It's about practice. It's about, doing more calculations. There's only so many complexities that they can come up with. But it's where I see a lot of people struggling with is those additional points. It's about the wording. What do I think about this? And the only way you would get better knowledge is to read.
Perfect. Then tax,
which was my favorite.
Great.
So I'm glad. I'm glad. So this was this is the technical questions that I didn't want, but but because it's text, it's okay. Like as you were talking, obviously I was reflecting. I think the one thing was with text, what helps is contrasting. Like, I know there's like questions around recommendations, like what would you recommend, like contrasting a scenario, like practicing. If the test asks you like one specific scenario, ask yourself, what would the opposite of that be? Like, if circumstances changed, what would your answer be? And then also integrating it with the other subjects. I think understanding sort of, what are the tax implications of that accounting transaction? Like starting as you're doing accounting, getting into the habit of, like, you're not going into the detail of it because you're focusing on accounting and whatever tests you have coming up, but getting into the habit of what would be the tax implications of this transaction or this scenario. And once you start doing that, you start really learning tax. And then same with what was said now, there's a lot of discussion questions in tax. So it's not just enough to understand the calculations, but you also need to know what to do with the answers and how to apply them and to write like tax memos. These are things that you can learn. And also, I think there's a lot of great examples in like on Google on like what does a tax memo look like? What does a tax opinion look like? Or a recommendation and all that stuff. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Then the best for last, the subject we all love to hate, auditing. Aaron.
Okay, auditing. I'm going to take you to my grade 10 to matric accounting teacher, Mr. Rolls. Doubt you're watching this.
We should send it to him.
He had a cupboard in his class, and what he said, and I still do this even when I'm, helping my students, is he'd open the door, he'd say, come with me. And then we'd, in our mind, walk through that closet and we'd be in the scenario that it is. Right? So, and a practical example of this, Prof. Frans Prinsloo, he was my auditing professor in CTA, and we got a question about an undercover parking. And we had to design the controls for this. Now, I used Mr. Roll's thing and I was like, let me go to Green Acres. It's a local mall in PE. Obega. So I went to the mall. I did my nice shopping with the money I didn't have. When I came back, I looked at my parking ticket. Now, a lot of people don't look at their parking tickets that often. But once you've paid, your parking ticket then has 3 timestamps. Right? Why does it have 3 timestamps? So number 1, it's when you come in, internal control. Number 2, it's when you paid. And the third one is usually about 20 minutes after you've paid, because most parking lots give you about 20 minutes grace to get your car and out. Now, simply because I took myself shopping and stuff, I could design all these controls for that undercover parking system. I could identify the risk because I walked through that thing, right? So one of my tips for auditing is really try to visualize the business. More often than not, you've probably experienced it. That helps you. And number two, have that little black book. I had a black book of all the answers, the generic answers, and then it becomes easy to just apply in the scenario.
That is great advice. Sure, guys, you're on a roll, hey?
Yeah, where were you guys when we were students? Now I want to go
struggling.
back. We're struggling.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess, we're rounding up the segment or the episode. So before we do that, I'm going to open up the floor to last closing comments. And then I want to give you also a little bit of insight from my perspective.
I've given so many closing comments.
Yeah, me too.
Great.
Yeah.
So I guess it's just me. So from my experience when, I was also writing ITC, I have noted that ITC is obviously, and any exam now is moving towards the qualitative approach where you have to give your recommendations or your strategies. And I always used to struggle a lot with those kind of questions. And that was basically half the paper, and one thing I learned with that is, I always saw that I was giving the points. I would always go to my tutor, whatever it is, and I'd be like, I gave that point. But the biggest issue was, so what? And then, being able to elaborate. So whenever you write a question, whether it's a strategy question or recommendation question, always ask yourself, did you answer the so what part of it? And then that's when you know that you've fully, tackled the question, tackled the answer, and prepped well for that specific, module, and nothing can basically throw you off. So that was one thing that helped me. Yeah. Anyways.
Yay.
Yeah. So this is the end of our show, but like I said, Gen Zs, I need to be seeing you in the comment section. I'm just not seeing enough. I need to see you sharing, liking, commenting, and even liking the post on Instagram as well, and sharing the reels on Instagram and LinkedIn. I think it's so important to distribute, this knowledge to every single one of your mates that are doing it. Remember, you're not alone. So this one video could actually help the next person who's feeling very, very demotivated. So that's why I keep encouraging you to engage and share. And if you have any questions, please also type out your questions and someone will respond to those questions within reasonable time. Anyways, thank you for today. And as you know the drill, I'm going to be ending off with a provoking thought or quote that, we can ponder on until the next episode. And this quote is, continuous improvement is not about the things you do well. That's work. Continuous improvement is about removing the things that get in the way of your work, the headaches, the things that slow you down. That's what continuous improvement is all about. That was very loaded, I must say so myself. Anyways, let me know what your thoughts are on this, quote. And yeah, until next time, I'll see you in episode 4. Bye-bye. Bye.